welcome everyone to our Twitter Spaces. Today we have Francesco from Superfluid, and we'll be learning more about real-time payment streams for businesses and enabled by Superfluid. And for those who are here today, thanks for joining us on a Monday. And if you don't mind, just one last call for action, like and retweet and get your friends on. But let's go. Would you like to share more about yourself and also what does Superfluid do?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's great to be here, and it was great to meet Sherry in person in Paris, and then we got a bit more acquainted with each other's projects. It was a lot of fun. So about me, I've been in the space since 2017. I've been basically deep in DeFi since it was a very small thing. I guess in 2019, when there were about 3 or 4 DeFi projects, me and my co-founder Miao, we launched a small project back then called RDAI, and this was, I think, one of the first derivatives on top of DAI. So that was one of the first products that we launched in the space. It was very exciting. And based on that, we had a couple of technical intuitions that led us to Superfluid, which we started about 2.5 years ago at this point. I don't know if it'd be helpful maybe to give some background on Superfluid. Basically, Superfluid is a DeFi protocol that allows users to stream money, which basically means transferring it every second from one account to another without making recurring transactions. So as a user, you have this very good experience where you basically make one transaction and then payments will keep going until you stop them. So it's very similar in a sense to a credit card where you give your credit card number and then they will automatically bill you, except there is no intermediary and there are no operations and there are no costs, right? So it's this completely decentralized and Web3 native way of doing recurring payments where the payments are settled every second without gas costs, without transactions, and without intermediaries.
Damn, that's very sick. And if you don't mind, can we get to know you a bit more? What were you doing before you got into crypto? And what led you to start Superfluid?
I guess before getting into crypto, I've done a ton of different things, but the main thing was just starting companies. So I started my first company when I was 17 out of school, and that kind of shaped me in a way that I just ended up being very curious and learning new things and never really fit into a neat box of one specific job. I think that's the most common thing that you hear about entrepreneurs is that they're unemployable, right? Because they're not good at anything, but they're okay at everything. And that's because ultimately you're always trying to do things and learn as you do them. So that was where I started, again, back in high school. And then based on that, I just always was very thirsty to explore and learn new things. I traveled a lot. I lived in Australia for a couple of years, and there I actually got my first job because I needed it for a visa. So I worked in marketing there. And then after that, came back to Europe and basically discovered crypto the second day that I moved to Estonia in Europe. And then basically I just dove super deep into crypto and never looked back. So it was a love at first sight kind of experience. And I've been working in crypto ever since. And obviously went through a couple of really, really dark years in 2018. People think it's a bear market now, but that was brutal. And back then, it was a good opportunity to remember that it's not all about money. And the people that stuck around back then were really high quality people. So a lot of the friendships that I hold very dearly right now are people that I met between 2018, 2019, early 2020. And then obviously when the bull market started, there was a completely new generation of people joining the space, but until you've lived through a bear market, you don't really know what it feels like. It's exciting to see a lot of people that are sticking around, even as prices are very volatile right now. But I think the real test of fire will be maybe in a year or two. If the market doesn't recover, how many people will still be around? That's going to be very exciting to see.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to call for a longer term bear market. It looks like it's doing a bit better now. But other than that, how do you get to start Superfluid? What you say you're going through a bunch of ideas since you're an entrepreneur. How do you bump into the idea of Superfluid?
Yeah, as I said, we built this derivative product called RDAI. So RDAI was basically a product built on top of compound finance, where it split the interest from the principal and it allowed you to redirect the interest on your DeFi investments into a different address. So basically, you could, for example, the use case we were very fond of was making donations, where you basically said, I put $1,000 into Compound, but I want all the interest to go to a charity. This was the use case. And people got very excited about the fact that we were building a derivative, that we were building on Compound and interest and lending. But the part that actually got us excited was the fact that we were transferring interest to a third party without ever making transactions. We realized that, wait, what we did here is actually moving funds without making any transactions or operations. And that's what got us really excited, because we realized that we could actually generalize that movement of funds beyond simply interest and into pretty much arbitrary flows of value. And that's when we basically came up with the idea for Superfluid, which is, as I said, a protocol that allows people to make these flows of money which don't require gas and basically move funds without making transactions. It is very much a derivative of that original project that we built, but at the same time, it's got a much broader scope. And I'm glad we didn't end up diving deep into RDI, because actually 6 months later, people don't remember this, but the yields in DeFi reached zero. Like on Compound, you had zero yield for DAI and USDC, and that could happen again.
Wait, when was that? When it reached
That was
zero?
winter 2020, I want to say. Yeah, winter 2020. So like January 2020. I think the yields were literally at zero. And we'd literally built a product which relied on yields, right?
Yeah.
If we'd kept working on that, then at that point we would just have stopped. I'm glad instead of that we started working on Superfluid, and we realized that Superfluid actually has a lot of other applications, because you can use it for all sorts of payments, way beyond just using interest.
I really like that story, because I think that goes to show that sometimes building a product is not always the most linear journey. Like, you build something else for a different end purpose, but what you realized was that primitive that you're working on is extendable to other use cases. I really like hearing that. I think that's part of the fun of being an entrepreneur as well. You set out to do one thing, but then the journey takes you to different places, and it brought you Superfluid, which is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, actually, a lot of people I even know make up stories of how they became entrepreneurs. So they'll say, oh yeah, I've always wanted to solve this problem, and then I finally found a solution for it. But that's not what happened to us at all. We'd never thought about, oh, let's make money stream. That was never like an idea we had. We simply figured out that this was technically possible. And then the idea itself got us really excited about it. We weren't on a mission to solve someone's problem that they couldn't stream their money. It's just, and I think some of the best ideas come like this when they're not actually trying to solve a problem. Because if you are trying to solve a problem, you'll generally try and look at what has worked before. While in the case of streaming money, it's a completely new thing. It's never worked before. It doesn't solve a specific problem. So if we were setting out to solve something, we probably would have never figured out how to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no one right way to do things. And what's really interesting is I actually do come from a payments background. And so when I discovered Superfluid, like about a year, a little less than a year ago, I was thinking, oh, this actually solves for some of the problems that many fintechs couldn't figure out how to do, because underlying infrastructure doesn't allow for standing instructions very fluidly, no pun intended, in traditional finance. So on that note, though, actually, how did you ultimately link this idea that you guys had that it was technically probable to do streaming payments to like actual business use cases where you are today?
So I guess we started just from the technical point of view, getting excited about it. Eventually, we realized that this was a very neat way of doing recurring payments, right? Because of how I said, you only make one transaction and then the stream stays open forever and it doesn't have any gas costs. So when we realized it was such a neat way of transferring value over time, I guess eventually we just fell into the realization that it could be the way of doing subscriptions. And subscriptions are something that's never really been done in crypto. But if you look at the digital economy, if you look at kind of Web 2, it's pretty much all based on subscriptions, right? The most successful business model in Web 2 is the SaaS business model, right? There's millions of companies that are funded that way. But in crypto, we never really did that because I think there was never really a way to do SaaS. There was never a way to do those recurring payments in crypto in a native way. So even now, you see a lot of companies, I don't know, the most famous ones are Nansen or Masari, and they charge you in fiat, which is ridiculous. They're in the crypto industry. They're talking about crypto all the time. And then to pay them, you need a credit card. And that's just insanely stupid. And it's incredible that we never really figured out a way to do this. But now we have, right? There is a way to do it. That way is streaming money. And the way it works is very similar to a credit card. You actually only make one transaction and then the money flows and the company gets paid every second, always on time, always regularly, no costs. So it's way cheaper than the debit card rails. It's way cheaper and more effective than having to make recurring transactions manually. And I think it's a really neat use case. And obviously, that is just one of the use cases, right? You can also do a lot of other things with money streams. You can pay salaries with streams. You can make investments in streams. And you can also bundle all of these things in very interesting ways. So, for example, I'm receiving part of my salary in a stream, and I actually invest as I receive the money every second. I reinvest that into Ether and Bitcoin. So I'm actually dollar cost averaging with my salary in real time. And that's something that was simply never possible before. So I guess ultimately, when you develop a new tool like this, then it opens up a lot of opportunities of things that can be built. And it's just a matter of time for people to explore those and build out all the different things that you can do.
On the note that you're saying that you're able to stream your income and then immediately in real time stream it to DCA. That's with Ricochet Exchange.
Yes, with Ricochet
Okay.
Exchange.
And other than, let's say, investing directly immediately with the same stream, what else can I do? Let's say a typical retail investor do with, let's say, his money. Is what other protocols are using Superfluid's streaming service?
So for now, I'd say Ricochet is probably the best place for a retail user to test it out. There's a lot of people using Superfluid, but for specific use cases. So for example, there's a lot of people paying salaries using Superfluid. But obviously as a retail person, except for maybe calling your boss and asking him if he's going to pay you in streams, there's not much you can do. But as a retail individual, I think, yeah, trying out Ricochet Exchange is probably the best thing to do right now. There are a couple of other things that are coming out in the next 2 months. So one thing, for example, is actually that you can get access to gated Discord servers. So I'm sure people in the audience have heard of Collabland, which is this tool for token gating Discords and Telegram servers. So using the same tool, Collabland, you can now actually stream gate those channels. So you can actually do basically subscription-based Telegram channels and subscription-based Discord channels. So this is also an interesting opportunity. And we're currently piloting with a few people, but I think over time this is going to become increasingly popular. And obviously, if there's anyone in the audience that has a Telegram group or a Telegram channel or a Discord server and would like to test this out, I think it's a very neat way of creating a business model for your server that effectively gives you recurring revenues, which is much better than selling NFTs. Because if you think about it, when you sell NFTs, you're selling them once. And then once you've sold them, you're done. There's no way to monetize after that. And what we see now quite commonly with PFP projects is that once they've sold their NFTs, it's very hard for them to live on the royalties alone. So they'll actually issue new collections, right? Because they run out of money. Now, if they, on top of just selling NFTs, they also had this way to create recurring revenues through something as simple as a subscription, I think this would make a lot more projects sustainable in the long term.
Yeah, I can actually see that really happening because other than NFT projects, with some of them having alpha channels, which I mean probably should be paid for because there's people spending a lot of time just creating those reports. Other than that, currently a lot of people are also paying subscriptions to Substack, so to access specific content. It'll be cool that if you can token gate Discord and have them stream subscriptions to it. Yeah, that's really a new source of income for a lot of people in the space.
Yeah.
The other idea that just came into my head actually as an application is actually royalties for music as well. I know like music NFTs and all of that is still somewhat early in the space, but I'm just thinking about like how you can actually real time, depending on how long or how often, how long somebody's playing your song on a service that actually gets streamed directly to you as an artist, and hopefully undercut some of the middleman platform fees that you see in Web2 products.
Yeah, I think with the right kind of team, Web3 could really undercut completely something like Spotify, right? There's so many opportunities to create better models where the audience is more close to the artist and more incentivized to participate in the value creation. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities around music as well. We've got a couple of projects in our ecosystem working on these kinds of use cases. It's something that comes up a lot. So I think it's just a matter of time before someone finds a model and creates the right team to bring that kind of project forward. But I think it is the kind of thing where you need a lot of industry expertise. Ultimately, you need to understand how royalties work, how the payouts work. You need to understand.
Wait, hello? I think your mic cut off a bit there.
Oh, sorry
Oh,
for that.
it's
Yep.
okay. Yeah, it's working again. No worries. Oh yeah, you're saying Superfluid actually can, I mean, streaming of assets on chain, it can be done for a wide range of use cases. But for you right now, in terms of business development, where are you guys aiming at currently?
In terms of business development, we do a bunch of different things at the same time. So we work very much on building an ecosystem. We've basically never built any product for retail. That's why when you asked me about retail, I literally said, go and try this other product, right? Because we don't actually build for users. We build developer tools, right? And we spend most of our time onboarding developers and helping those developers succeed with their ideas. So in terms of business development, for example, personally, I'm very involved with our accelerator. So we currently have this accelerator where we have 10 projects which are getting ready to either go live or fundraise in the next month. So I'm spending a lot of time with them. I'm working on quite a few integration jobs with different projects in the space that we'll be announcing in the coming months. And basically those different avenues for the exploration of money streams. So for example, the things we just announced recently were things like Collab Land, right, which I just mentioned, but also Unlock Protocol. We've already announced actually a partnership with Lee Finance for cross-chain bridging of superfluid assets. And there's a lot of other partnerships that we're working on, which will be, as I said, announcing in the next couple of months. But our goal is always the same thing, which is to grow our ecosystem, make money streams more and more useful, and at the same time build completely new things. We're not excited about rebuilding stuff that already exists. We want to see the completely new, crazy ideas that are only possible with money streams. So, for example, we mentioned before Degen Dogs, right? My PFP. That's something that we'd never seen before. It's an NFT which you buy it and it streams you money. And that's a completely new idea. And I think that's just the first iteration of it. There could be a lot of other ways, right? You could buy an NFT and then you receive some sort of governance token, and then maybe you stake that governance token to get part of the auction proceeds. There's a lot of different ideas that can be built. And ultimately, I just spend a lot of time exploring these with people in our community and ecosystem and helping them build cool stuff. One thing that's actually coming quite soon will allow you to stream out of liquidity pools. So imagine you can put your money into a Y-Earn Vault, or you can put your money into Aave or wherever else, and then you can stream dollars straight out of that. So for example, if you want to subscribe to an alpha channel, right, through Collabland on Discord, you can stream out of your Y-Earn pool $10 a month and stream those $10 into Collabland. So you're never missing the yield and you never hold any idle dollars, right? It's always streaming through you to the counterparty. And then you can imagine the counterparty, which is a business, further using those dollars, for example, to pay their employees. And then their employees spending those dollars on Ricochet to buy Bitcoin. So this is the ecosystem that we're very keen to build, is effectively this network of streaming cash flows where money is flowing from one account to another, and then from that account to another, and ultimately connecting all these different applications in our ecosystem.
Yeah, that's really cool. The idea of like you guys bring capital efficiency all the way to the max, where literally when I'm receiving the income, I'm really staking it or investing it somewhere. For a typical retail user right now, if I were to interact with such protocols, would I say it's difficult to get the retail user to understand how streaming payments work, or how to even get one started? Like, what's the difference with, let's say, receiving my pay on a monthly basis versus real time? I feel like a lot of people in the Web2 space also, we're already very used to fixed date payments in bulk versus real time continuous streams. Yeah. How do you bridge that mindset shift?
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's really hard. People like investors often ask me, who are your competitors? And I always tell them, my competitor is the fact that we've never done this before and people are so set in their ways, right? Like ultimately, we've lived all our lives using money in lump sums, that changing that is just a huge mental shift. And that is really difficult to change. And you're right, people got really used to that. And the advantages and the changes that are required are not necessarily so easy to understand. So that is definitely the biggest challenge. And that's why we focus on the crypto space. I think in the crypto industry, we've ultimately attracted the most pioneering and risk-taking entrepreneurs in the world. And as a result, we see a lot of people, adopting this technology because ultimately it is just a matter of getting over the mental burden of trying something new. Once you get over that, it really isn't that difficult. In fact, I would actually argue that money streams are much simpler than recurring payments because recurring payments actually have a lot of problems with them. So let me give you a couple of pointers here. So if you have your salary coming in on the 25th of the month, but you have to pay your rent on the 20th of the month, the only way for you to do this is to either hold a full month of rent for 25 days a month in your account, just waiting to pay that bill, or you take out a loan 5 days early, right? A payday loan to pay your rent. Now, if you think about it, if you're streaming your payments, you never have this problem. All of your payments are coming in and going out at exactly the same time. And as long as you're making more money than you're spending, you never have a cash flow problem, right? You never have a cash flow issue. Instead of looking at a calendar where you have all these different dates where you pay different things and receive money from different clients, you suddenly only have a list of continuous expenses and continuous income. And that is actually financially way simpler to deal with than with a full calendar of payment maturities. And an example I often bring up with crypto people, because obviously there's a lot of traders, is that it's very similar to the fundamental change that happened in the futures market when people invented perpetual futures. If you think about it, before that, people were trading fixed term futures, and fixed term futures each have a different maturity. And what that means is it's very hard to create liquid markets for them because they're all different. In the case of money streams, every money stream is a payment which is settling at the same cadence, which is every second. So suddenly your accounting becomes much simpler and you have higher capital efficiency, you have fewer cash flow gaps. If you ever need to take on credit, it's much cheaper because you don't have to take on a full month of credit. You just take on a few hours of credit, right? So it's much cheaper in terms of quantity of money that you actually need to borrow. So there's a lot of very interesting opportunities and advantages to using money streams. But obviously, as you said, we really do need to onboard more businesses and create those very simple to understand ways of doing things, right? So ultimately, people do monthly payroll because they've always done monthly payroll. And we need to prove to them that doing streaming payroll is strictly better. And that's something that we're working on. We've got a couple of partners that are launching actually very soon. I can't say exactly when, but very soon they're launching with very good solutions for payroll streaming. And they will come with some automations which will just make the whole experience so easy that I'm sure that will start onboarding a lot of people. And one thing that we're actually rolling out later in August will allow you, if you're receiving a streaming salary, it will allow you to basically borrow against your future salary. so that you actually receive your paycheck at the beginning of the month. And this is something that, again, we've never seen in Web3, right? In Web3 and DeFi, we've always built a lot of stuff for traders. We've always built a lot of stuff so people can take on leverage. We've built NFTs so people can trade them and have fun and participate in communities. But now with things like Superfluid, we can actually build things that will make people's most important financial transactions, which are their salaries, much better for them. And this is why we're really excited about working on Superfluid, because it really does change the game in a way that can really impact a lot of people.
Yeah, and I can personally speak to this as well, because one of the biggest challenges that I see with people, particularly who are earning kind of paycheck to paycheck, or in Singapore, actually, there's a big population of people who are migrant workers from different parts of Southeast Asia. There's actually a big problem when it comes to payday loans, where people are taking predatory loans because their salary payment date and then the date in which they need to have capital outflows just don't match. And so there's all these solutions that I think in Web 2 are being created, like earned wage access, etc. But I just think that this works so much better. And so I really do think stuff like this can be extremely impactful just across the board for different people. Sorry, Fran, you were saying something?
No, I was just saying exactly. That's exactly right. So many people have been hurt by payday loans and their predatory rates that it's a huge opportunity for disruption. And ultimately, if you think about it, you should get paid every second you work, right? There is no reason why you should wait for 2 weeks or for a month to get your salary, because you already worked for it. And effectively what you're doing is you're giving your employer a month of free credit. But as an employee, you're not a banker. You shouldn't be lending money. You should get paid every second. Your employer should pay you every second, and you should never have to basically take on predatory lending because you are actually the one lending to your employer, right? So it's obviously a major issue, and I do hope that through, again, some of the infrastructure we're building on Superfluid, but also a lot of stuff still needs to be built. But I do hope that in a reasonable time frame, we'll be able to help people that really need this. As you mentioned, immigrant workers and people who really live paycheck to paycheck. The unfortunate reality is that for now, this is mostly for very privileged software developers working for crypto companies. But hopefully, as we build out the ecosystem, it will become more accessible for more people as well.
Yeah, I like the idea that you're saying it is difficult for a single retail user to understand how this works and to get used to it. But with you guys partnering with companies like, we were speaking to Request Finance last weekend, they already have a lot of firms running payments through them. Right now, you guys are doing just recurring payments streams with them. If you guys were to switch it over to real-time streams, I think everyone there would be rather able to accept it a lot easier. And with each protocol you guys onboard easily, the retail would get used to it. And other than that, if you guys are you guys doing anything with non-financial products? I saw something with regards to having Superfluid integrate with GameFi. Would you like to expand on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we like to talk a lot about the financial use cases because they're ultimately, at least for me, they're the most interesting and impactful ones. But there are a lot of opportunities to simply create new experiences. If you think of money streams, are basically just a way of moving tokens from A to B over time. And if you think of a game, there's a lot of different parts of a game where that could make a lot of sense. So, for example, you could imagine a game where, for example, maybe you even actually do stream the money, but in exchange for that, they'll stream you in-game tokens, right? Or maybe by holding a specific character, you receive a stream of a certain resource, which is also tokenized and can be streamed through Superfluid. Or maybe in order to get access to a certain part of a game, you need to stream some other resource, which is also a streamable token through Superfluid. So there's a lot of different, basically, ways that you can use streaming in a game. And I think ultimately when you're building a game, it's all about creating a new and fun experience for your users. And that's something that money streams are a good way to do because they're novel, right? Users haven't seen them before. There's definitely a very strong psychological effect to receiving a stream of money. If nobody's tried this, I would recommend basically just going on our dashboard, which is app.superfluid.finance, and just trying it out maybe on a test net. And it just feels good. If you see the number go up every second, it feels really good. And this is not like a Bitcoin number go up, where it go up and then it go down as well. In the case of a money stream that you're receiving, it only goes up. So imagine if you're playing a game and maybe you buy an NFT to a character in the game, and then you start receiving a constant stream of the in-game currency. That is so addictive. There are so many opportunities to really get players excited about the fact that every second they're receiving more and more of a token, that I think eventually somebody will build a really addictive game using token streaming, and hopefully we won't all get addicted to it.
Yeah, definitely. And other than non-financial products, do you guys also target different regions as well? You were speaking a bit towards having immigrants use streaming in the future. I guess that might, I'm trying to lead it up to Southeast Asia, but yeah, do you see any development there for payment streams?
I'd love to. We were talking a lot to Sherry about this when we met in Paris during the conference. I think there's a lot of opportunity to provide value to regions that have less developed financial infrastructure. But at the same time, the challenge is that precisely because there is less developed financial infrastructure, it's much harder to provide that value. So I think it's going to be very challenging to bring about solutions that can actually be adopted in these markets. And it is 100% going to depend on the creation of local companies. I don't think, I don't feel that from where I'm sitting comfortably in Europe, I can solve problems in Southeast Asia. I wish it were that simple, but the truth is it will have to be people on the ground who know the market, know the problems, know the people, and are able to build solutions for them. And I think ultimately, this is why we build an ecosystem, right? Because we can't possibly fix every problem in the world, and we can't possibly explore every use case for money streams, but we can provide the most seamless developer experience, and we can help those developers to build out businesses that make sense in their markets. And so I'm just saying there's a lot of opportunities for us to collaborate with BlueJay, because ultimately what's very important to us is reaching as many users as possible. And I think for that, you really do need local stablecoins. You can't expect everyone to use dollars, right? I think that's a very American-centric view of the world. But ultimately, even in Europe, people are always talking about, why don't we have euro stablecoins? And that's, again, a massive market. But if you think of all the smaller currencies that exist in the world, think of, I don't know, even just the Swiss franc, right? The Swiss franc is considered the most safe fiat currency in the world, and yet we don't have a stable coin for it, right? So just imagine how early we are in terms of building these stablecoin infrastructure for the rest of the world, right? It's still quite far, I feel. I'm excited for things like BlueJay because you really are trying to solve for people who really need these solutions.
Yeah, definitely. Understand that you guys won't be able to do it alone, hence the ecosystem. Hence, maybe request finance to deploy remote payments across the world. And yeah, BlueJay can come in to denominate those payments in Southeast Asian currencies for the people in this region. And yeah, other than that, okay, I'm down to my last few questions. For any of you who have any questions, kindly just request to speak, and yeah, I will bring you on later. But yeah, with where do you see crypto going in the next few years for payments?
I think payments is probably going to be the most exciting sector to work in crypto, because I think we've touched the peak of trading, and I don't think there's that many more ways you can get leverage that we haven't explored yet. So in terms of DeFi, I think payments are most likely going to be the next frontier. And payments in themselves are not exactly what gets me excited. So payments are exciting, right? Payments are moving money on chain and getting people paid and making sure that businesses can actually operate in this decentralized world. And that's very exciting. But what's even more exciting is the fact that when you start building cash flows on chain, when you start having businesses that receive all or at least most of their income on chain,
What this enables is actually a ton of extra financial products that so far we've never really had a market for. So if you think of DeFi right now, it's pretty much purely concentrated on, again, trading, leverage products, some derivatives, NFTs, and NFT financialization, right? Effectively, we're building finance to serve the needs of the tokens that we are creating to serve the needs of the tokens, right? Like it's very self-serving, current DeFi. But when you start introducing payments, it's a completely different amount of value which you're introducing to the space, right? Because if I buy a product, for example, if I buy a service, the value of that service becomes effectively something that we are now measuring on chain. And that's an immense amount of value that we can bring on chain. And we can then financialize because you can start lending money to businesses based on their cash flows. You can start financializing, for example, parts of a business's inventory. There's a lot of opportunities ultimately that come from more transparency on chain for business income and business operations. And I think this is going to be a massive opportunity. But to get there, we need to onboard a lot more businesses. And to onboard a lot more businesses, we need to show them how well they will be served, how they will get access to all these opportunities, and how, that initial burden of using crypto, which is ultimately going to be a bit uncomfortable, right? There will be some things they have to learn. They will have to deal with accountants that don't know how to do it. They will have to figure out what the best practices are in terms of reporting and taxes. So all of this is uncomfortable for a business, right? Because if you're a business, you just want to run your business. You don't want to deal with any of this. We really have to create a very sweet package for these businesses to try it in the first place. But when we do, I have no doubts that DeFi will create much better financial products, much cheaper financial products. And we'll be able to also create financial products for very small businesses, which are currently not catered to by banks or financial institutions. We'll be able to create the same financial products and scale them across different geographies. If you're an entrepreneur in the Philippines, you have access to the same DeFi products as an entrepreneur in the US. And that is simply not true with traditional finance. And that's something that gets me very excited because someone living in the Western world or in advanced economies, you always take for granted even the most basic things, like, oh, I can go to the shop and pay with my debit card. That is not the case in the majority of the world, and let alone business financial products. That's completely unexplored. And I feel that's something where DeFi will really shine and will really put to bed all the naysayers who still don't believe that crypto has a use case. But again, to get there, we need to build better payment infrastructure. And that's why I'm very excited to work on Superfluid.
Thanks, Francesco. Sherry, do you have anything to add here with
Yeah.
regards to
Yeah, I was just going to say, completely echo much of what you said, Fran. This is what gets me super excited about the whole space. I just think that it's going to be a back-end infrastructure that just works so much better than what we have in traditional finance today, where you're dependent on basically like all of these bilateral like agreements between different banks in order to enable payments. Some of the things happen very manually today. One thing that I think most people may not know is even interbank transfers in countries like the Philippines require manual settlement. So there's actually people that are doing this at two different banks at the end of certain periods. And so I think the possibilities are absolutely endless. Now, the tough challenge that is ahead is how do you actually build the right use cases step by step? Because as you mentioned, it's going to be hard to target maybe perhaps day workers or the migrant workers right away. There's a bit of this path you have to build maybe towards people who have a lower hurdle to adoption, and then build that phase by phase. But I think what gets me really excited is that the ecosystem is coming alive. I think a few years ago, you may not have seen as many people building real world utilities or building payments that are crypto oriented, but I'm seeing a lot more players coming up that are excited in building in this area and really just finding that long-term economic value of all of these different primitives that we're building in DeFi. And so whatever we can do in working with people in the ecosystem like you all to make some of this available for Asia, where of course we can also introduce to other players here who know the markets, that's something that we would love to do.
Yeah, definitely very excited about Asia and in general being able to expand to that region. I think yeah, we talked about this in person as well. I think there's a lot we can learn from you and a lot we can learn about those markets, and yeah, just very keen to explore them because again, I think in the West we have very good financial infrastructure, but other places don't, and those are the places where we can make an impact much faster.
For sure.
Okay, so I guess for now, I'm more or less done with my questions. For the floor, if any of you have any questions for Francesco or Sherry, yeah, just kindly request to speak and we'll bring you up. And yeah, thanks for dropping by, everyone. So actually, what time is it at your place now?
It's just before 4 p.m.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
For us, it's almost 10 p.m. But yeah,
Oh, wow. Oh, thanks to everyone from Singapore for tuning in that so late.
Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of Singaporeans here today. And yeah, 10 o'clock, I guess, is pretty normal for us. It's like after work. So yeah, it's a nice time to just get on Spaces, listen to some DeFi protocols, talk about how we're building and where we're going.
Yeah. Sherry, how's Korea?
Korea is insane right now. I don't know if anyone's seen, but there are just floods in the streets right now. I'm actually dialing in from a poker room because I could not make it back to my hotel because the streets are literally flooded. So if you hear any chips in the background, that's what it is. But it's absolutely insane. Yeah, I have never seen anything like it. And I live in Southeast Asia.
Wow. So everything is flooded. It reminds me of the film Parasite.
Yeah.
It's the only image I have of Korea.
Actually, I'm not lying. It's very accurate. Like some of the metro stations have closed. People are cars are entirely submerged, and some people are taking shelter on top of their cars. It's I've never seen anything like this. I was just laughing because it's super.
Taking shelter on top of their cars.
Yeah.
That's funny. But
They're super fluid streets right now with the floods in Seoul.
Yeah, there you go. Not every super fluid.
No, not this one. But no, otherwise, Korea has been great. For those who don't know, it's actually Blockchain Week going on. Plenty of projects and folks in crypto here. But yeah, the rain was something that was a little unexpected, but okay, we're making do with it.
But yeah, that's that great pun was it's a good way to end the Spaces. And yeah, thanks a lot, Francesco, for sharing with us about Superfluid today and the future of payments, which you guys are building. Yeah, if the floor does have any questions, yeah, we'll be closing off now. Yeah, thanks again, and thanks Sherry for tuning in from the flooded streets of Korea.
Fran, thank you so much for joining. It was an awesome conversation, and look forward to more in the future where we can talk about how we can do cool stuff for Asia. And for everyone else who joined, thanks for tuning in tonight or this morning, wherever you're from.